So the big video today, T4 to T3 conversion and why it matters. Why is it so important? Why is it that basically my whole clinic has been built on this one matter? So your thyroid, as I've said many times, produces 5 hormones. Get that in the video. T4. T4 is what levothyroxine it is. It is not the active hormone. T3, the thyroid produces about an eighth of the T3. That is the active hormone. T2, T1, we think help convert T4 to T3, and the fifth one is produced by the C cells, which is a different section of the thyroid and is called calcitonin. So T4 is not the active hormone. It is a pro-hormone. It must be converted into T3. T3, triiodothyronine, is the active hormone. It is this that enters the cells, switches on your cell's nucleus, affects your DNA, affects how all your cells are produced. It drives your metabolism, your basic metabolic rate. As I've put there, it literally affects everything. Energy, mood, temperature, heart rate. We could add everything to that. Guts, bladder, everything. Every single cell is affected by T3 hormone. So the traditional assumption that was brought about mainly because of levothyroxine coming in as vogue is that if a TSH is normal, you must be euthyroid. In other words, you must have a normal thyroid that's working fine. We've replaced you plenty enough. You have lots of levothyroxine, your TSH is normal. You must also, therefore, the assumption says that your conversion must be adequate and therefore you have adequate levels of the active hormone T3. If you only test TSH and T4, you're going to assume that, aren't you? But not everyone converts the same. I'm not going to go into these lot in great details because that's for a different topic. But we all have deiodinase enzymes that help us convert T4 to T3. Some of us are lacking in them. I'm lacking in a genetic. I've got, I'm going to get this the wrong way around, homozygous. So I've got one defect in my deiodinase 2 enzyme. So I will never convert as well as other people. I will never convert that T4 to T3 as well as being menopausal, which often you can consider as part of stress and part of inflammation. And I have Hashimoto's, which is the bottom point there, which I'll come back to. So I am never going to be the greatest converter of T4 to T3. It can also be affected if you've got liver issues. So if your liver function isn't as good as it could be, you may not convert as well. If your nutrient status isn't as good. So that goes both in terms of if you eat a load of junk food and you don't have healthy gut, but also if you're starving yourself. Starving yourself actually will reduce conversion of T4 to T3 because your body wants to protect itself. It wants to almost go into famine mode. Inflammation, stress, chronic illness, all again have that same sort of thing. Your body wants to push you into a famine mode. It wants to preserve itself, and it does that by holding on to the fuel, the T4, and not letting everything go into the fire, the T3. Genetic variations, again, is sort of going back to the enzymes side of things. And then the big one for me, actually, which I think is very underestimated and understated, when we have Hashimoto's or you don't have a thyroid gland in the first place, you've already lost an eighth of your circulating T3 in your body. So you are totally and utterly reliant upon your conversion of T4 to T3 in the rest of your body to get to your tissues. So a common pattern that we see in clinic is a normal TSH, a normal-ish T4, and then a low T3 and persistent symptoms. Now we see it because we test for it, and that's really, really, really important. we see those lower T3s, we look at the conversion rate. So by that I mean the ratio of the T4 to the T3. Now in the labs we use, because everybody's labs are slightly different, in the labs we use, the conversion we're looking for is to be roughly less than 4 to 1. So in other words, if you've got a T4 of 20, let's go for simple numbers, I would hope and expect that your T3 is at least 5. Okay, 4 to 1. We've then got the added dimension of reverse T3. So reverse T3 is a normal hormone. We all have it. If we were all to test our reverse T3, we'd all have a certain amount of reverse T3. It's a waste product. It's getting rid of the T4 that we don't use, that we don't need. But that level will go up when we're under stress, when we've got illness, when we're inflamed. It is an inactive form of hormone. And actually what's even worse about it is that reverse T3, if you've got high levels of it, it will actually block any active T3 that you have at a cellular receptor level. That reverse T3 can increase in physiological stress, as I've said. But the other really, really interesting fact, especially in our clinic, is that if you keep increasing levothyroxine, so if the default is, okay, you're not feeling well, let's increase your levothyroxine again. If that levothyroxine ends up being too much fuel for your body, and everybody's bodies are different, but even more so if it goes over that lab range, the reference range, if you've got too much levothyroxine, too much fuel on that fire puts it out. So in other words, your body will produce more and more and more reverse T3, which is then blocking the active T3, but also meaning that most of that T4 is actually being made into reverse T3 and not active T3 in the first place. Does that make sense? So over replacement of levothyroxine can cause too much reverse T3, which means you've got less active T3 being converted and that active T3 is being blocked by the high levels of reverse T3. Sometimes all I need to do is reduce down a levothyroxine level and add in some thyroid-friendly supplements such as selenium and zinc, which will help your body to convert the T3. Sometimes that's all we need to do. So does this mean everyone needs T3? No. Lots of patients do really well on levothyroxine on T4 alone. And that's true. You know, I'm not going to demonize any one medication. My clinic is all about balance, and I have probably about 25%, maybe 30% of my patients are on levothyroxine alone. A lot of them are younger, and a lot of them are men as well, but not always. I have a lot of women who are also on levothyroxine alone. And the other thing is combination therapy is not first line. It is always worth us starting off on levothyroxine, seeing how you go. It's much more easily tolerated. It's much easier to dose. It's not safer, but you're less likely to go over treated on levothyroxine because your body is able to adapt to itself. But fundamentally, if that isn't enough for you, if you are not functioning on levothyroxine alone, why would we not give you something like liothyronine, the synthetic version of T3, or even Armour thyroid, which is all 5 of your thyroid hormones? And with this, we are always looking at your risks, why we're doing it, what the benefits are going to be, which leads us on to this. So when we assess a patient, actually, I probably look at symptoms almost more than anything. That's the most important part of our assessment. What's your story? What are your symptoms? What are you feeling? Now, that means now, not necessarily 10 years ago. I want to know how you are now. How are you feeling? Then, when I look at bloods, I look at antibodies first, because that immediately tells me whether we have a Hashimoto's or not. If you've had Hashimoto's for many years, your antibodies may have gone down to nothing. So it's also, again, going back to the history. But look at your antibodies. And actually, this slide is not in the order that I tend to look at. I tend to then look at a T4, then a T3, and then a TSH. But most importantly, looking at the clinical context. Then we'll look at your cardiovascular risk. So, I will do that in my head. You may not realize that I'm assessing all of these things when I'm speaking to you, but I will always be looking at your age. Are you on HRT? Are you fit and well? And then that adds up to an idea of your cardiovascular risk. Do you smoke? Are you overweight? All of these things. And then we think about how we're going to add in some T3 for you and make you slowly feel better. And slowly is the operative word, I'm afraid. Thyroid health is never very quick. So it's a brief video about this today, but the key message is T4 to T3 conversion is physiology. It is physiology. This isn't some woo-wah or some crazy stuff. This is basic physiology. We're not chasing the numbers, we're chasing symptoms. We're cracking down on symptoms, for want of a better way of describing it. I want you to be living the life that you want to live. I asked that of a patient the other day. She thought I'd slightly gone mad. But what I want to know is, are you feeling well? Are you doing the things that you want to do in life? And then that leads us on to individualized safe care, if I can speak. So is this right for you, and is this safe for you? But then going back to, is this getting you to where your life wants to be? I hope that's helpful.